Good morning from Panhandle Outdoors, America's only daily outdoor TV show. Your source for fishing, hunting, and information for folks who enjoy the great outdoors. Now sit back, relax. It's Panhandle Outdoors.
Well, welcome to Panhandle Outdoors. As you can see, Winston is not in the studio today, and I'll be with you, and another guest, co-guest will be with you as well. So here we go. River readings today are brought to us by Coca-Cola Bottling Company. The Apalachicola River, now we're taping this actually a couple of days before the show airs, so I'm trusting that we're not having a deluge of rain to change things, but the Apalachicola River, according to the charts today, should be somewhere around 5.7 feet. It's falling. That's measured at Bluntstown. The Choctawhatchee River, which the gauge is at Careville, is about 4.5 feet, a little higher than it's been in the past, but particularly last time we were on. But anyway, it is falling as well, so expect those to fall. Tides are brought to us today by Kent Forest Lawn Funeral Home. The high tide, let me start with this. The low tide we've already had today. It was at 1:51 this morning. High tide today is at 2:46 in the afternoon. So if you like to fish here on the coast, particularly in the Panama City, Gulf County area, the tides are perfect if you want to fish. We'll get into a little bit about fishing later, particularly during the colder months, but that's a 1.5 foot tide change, which is ideal if you like to fish near shore for some of these species, but we'll talk a little bit more about that hopefully later. Weather today is brought to us by Gulf Coast Air Conditioning, Drew Pollard and Company. Drew is a great guy, by the way. Low today is 51. We've already had our low. High today is 70. It's kind of balmy. It's a big difference than what we had a couple of weeks ago when we had all the snow and ice. Tremendous amount of difference. Clouds and sunshine, 10% chance of rain, and the winds out of the east-southeast at 5 to 10. So if you go out on particularly a small boat, you need to be really, really careful. No kayaks, anything like that with a wind like that, unless you've got a sheltered place you can go in. Water temperature is cold. I read the water temperature is 57, a little over 57 degrees. By the way, the coldest, we're going to talk about this later, the coldest month of the year. But if you go out and you want to get in the water, if you want to do anything, you need at least 4 mil waders, that kind of thing, if you want to be out. Okay, with that, we're going to take a break and we'll be back in just a minute. Well, folks, welcome back to Panhandle Outdoors. Familiar face you see here on my left is Ken Paramore. Ken and I, as I've said many times before, worked many years together, and Ken was always reliable and somebody I could talk to, and I hope he felt the same about me. But Ken and I both retired and now doing different things, and he's become a world-class hunter, and he's killed actually a couple of nice deer this year, hasn't he?
Yes, I have.
Tell us about them.
But you can tell that, Winston's at the scraping the bottom of the barrel again when these two mugs show up. Yeah, I've had a good season as I've had in years, probably since the storm. Yeah. I've been fortunate enough to harvest 3.
And you got a photo, I think, of one of your bucks coming up.
I got several of them. I'm going to send. There's 3 different ones.
Good deal.
And, they've been scattered out since late December, all the way up to day before yesterday.
Wow.
And so, well, I'm going to coast for a little while. I don't need any more. And it just so happens when you try to be selective, and most of the time you are, and then there's other days that you've gone so much and you just see one come out and you say that it's time. Yeah. Whether he's that giant you've been waiting on or got camera pictures of, or he's just a good deer.
Are they through rutting where you are? Okay. No. They're still moving. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And this one I killed day before yesterday, he stunk. I mean,
For people that don't know what a deer and rut, what rut mean, rut is a period of time when bucks, their hormones in their body causes them to kind of do things that they ordinarily wouldn't do. They come out, they go into places in the open, you see them, and they make them more vulnerable to people that like to hunt like us. And you may not see them 11 months out of the year, but they tend to, when they're in the rut, they'll change their activity.
Yeah, a lot of them is at night until the
right.
rut. Yeah,
and all you do is see pictures of them.
And then it could be in the middle of the day. But I've got to give a shout out to Charlie Webb and David Laster with Lat and Long Tracking. If it wasn't for them, a cold night in December, I probably would only be talking about 2 deer instead of 1. And they were referred to me. I shot the deer in a good place, but he ran and it got dark, and you couldn't find him. I lost blood after I'd done a big old grid search, and a friend of mine referred me to them, and we had a deer that was shot the night before by another member who was going to go back the next day to look, and he did, and the deer had been caught by coyotes and was tore to pieces. And so we found that deer that afternoon, and actually how I found it, I looked at the area where there were a bunch of buzzards in a chop, and there was a bald eagle sitting on top of the deer carcass. And so I decided I don't want to have the same thing happen to this deer, although I thought pretty confident I'd have found him the next day. But we called that Lat and Long Tracking.
What kind of dogs do they use?
They were lab-looking dogs, yeah, but just to watch that process and how they worked, they found the deer in 15 minutes.
Were they on a lead?
No.
They just turn them loose?
No, turn them loose.
Do they bark when they find the deer?
Yeah, well, they got them on a GPS-looking device where they
can follow them.
They follow them, but they stood right with me, right where the hit site was. And you watched them on that screen, and then they went out there, and the line stopped. Both dogs stopped. And I was looking over their shoulder, and I said, well, what's that mean? And they said, well, he's on your deer. And so we started going to them. And before we got to them...
Did you think it was possible? Did you think your deer went that way?
No.
Okay, all right.
I had lost the blood, and I thought he went another direction.
I tell you what,
that was another problem.
Hold that thought. we got to take a break now, and we'll be back in just a minute. Well, welcome back to Panhandle Outdoors. Okay, Ken, you said you got a local service to come up. They're from Panama City. What was the name of the people again now?
Lat and Long Tracking.
And they do tracking for when people lose deer. And
yeah.
They
came all the way from Panama City up to Calhoun County. They were at a Christmas party, and they dropped what they were doing. You have to wait. They want you to wait 4 hours.
No.
After you shot, before they want to put the dog on the track.
And that's to keep from pushing the deer, probably.
And they also don't want you to do a bunch of grid searching.
Because of human sign.
I was guilty of, but I didn't know at the time. Yeah. I do now. And they went out there, and that line on that GPS gadget stopped. We started going to them, and before we got to them, the dog started barking. And I said, what's that mean? He said, he's calling us. They're waiting on us. We didn't get there fast enough to suit them. And we got there. Both dogs are on the deer. And like
that coyote's gotten to him yet?
No. It was 10 o'clock at night.
Okay.
But I had to give it a break and come back with them. But that was quite an experience, and those guys were great, and I highly recommend them. And the proof was in the pudding about finding a wounded deer with a dog.
When you told me about that, there are several businesses in this country that do the same thing, and there's one guy that I follow on YouTube. He's a great turkey hunter. I think he lives in Wisconsin. His name is Shane Simpson. And Shane actually has a business where when people shoot a deer, Again, it's in the other end of the country, but if they call him and he's in reasonable driving distance, he brings his dog, and I'm pretty sure it's a lab, and he brings his dog, and then he will track the deer for the person. And sometimes they, have made a good shot, sometimes they haven't. But anyway, it's fascinating to watch.
My shot was a little bit behind the shoulder, but it wasn't gut shot. But I lost the track and lost the blood, and it was dark, and
you were dead in the water.
I just had to, I knew the coyotes would have found him if I waited till the next day to go back. So, but it was something to see. It was something to watch, and it was incredible.
Well, maybe other people will use their service and keep it up. So, and you've got something about turkeys too, don't you?
Yeah, we always talk about turkeys.
Well, that's all right.
I've still got some calendars I'm trying to get rid of. If anybody's interested, get in touch with me.
And tell us about what the calendars, what they do, and
it's
fundraiser
a gun a week for 52 weeks. The drawing is the Wednesday evening pick 3 on the Florida Lotto. The calendars are $50, so it's about $1 a week if you look at it that way.
Good deal.
And every week it's got a gun listed. And if your number comes up, the calendars are numbered. If your number comes up, you win the gun that's on that day that gets drawn.
Good deal.
And it's just a fundraiser for the state chapter.
Good. All right. Okay. On the subject of while we were going back to talk about deer, after the last show, Ken, I had somebody to ask me, I don't remember how it came up, but we said something about feeding deer or baiting deer, whatever, and this person hunted a lot in Alabama. And I said, listen, I don't know Alabama's rules. I've heard, but I don't know what their rules are. But Florida's rules, I'm sure, are different. And do you remember from your experience what the baiting rules or feeding rules were, whatever you want to call them, here in Florida?
Sure do.
All right.
You are supposed to maintain feeding station 6 months prior to hunting the deer.
Yeah.
It is still illegal to take a bag of corn out to a piece of property and pour it on the ground.
Correct.
And sit on it in a tree or in a blind or wherever. It's still not legal. However, it's probably done quite a bit.
Yeah.
You get into some technicals with it, but the letter of the law is that feeding stations must be maintained 6 months prior to. So that means now the problem, with enforcement is making sure all that has been adhered to. But if someone goes in and pours a bunch of bait, whether it be corn or something else, and just sits on it that day or that afternoon, number one, it's not going to be that effective because it takes them a little while to find it. I mean, not real long, but sometimes a day or two. So it's really not that productive, but it is done, but it's not legal to do it that way.
Okay, all right. And one of the biggest questions that we used to get, or I used to get when I worked for the agency, and I heard this a lot, is it better to feed corn or is it better to feed something else? And I don't know that it matters a whole lot. Deer love, they will eat soybeans, which are a high protein food. They will eat, there's deer food, pellets that you can buy.
It kind of determines it by what you can afford.
Correct.
But what I've done the last few years is I do combinations. have done pellets. I've talked about it on the show here before. I do the blocks. The last 2 years I've started using alfalfa.
Oh.
And they love alfalfa and mixing it with corn at the site. So I got and cob corn. If you can buy bulk cob corn.
They love getting the corn off the cob.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but alfalfa, you buy it at Tractor Supply, and I guess they feed it to horses, and I got pictures of them eating alfalfa.
It is a high protein food, and they love it. Alfalfa's not grown typically in the South, but as long as they don't get too much of it, it's good for them.
But most people use corn because it's the cheapest.
Right, yeah. Bears are a real issue, though. If you feed corn and the bears they will either come to your feeder and they'll sit under the feeder and shovel it in, or or they'll tear your feeder up. Now, they'll tear your feeder up if they can get to it, if it's got soybeans, whatever. So if you're using a feeder, make sure your feeders are put on like an L-shaped pole, that the feeders are high enough the bears can't get to it. If you're in bear country, particularly that's east of here, usually, but there are some bears west of here. But anyway, general rule though, just be real careful about what you do. Take you a ladder. Leave you a ladder and a winch where you can get to your feeder, let your feeder up and down, and it'll save you in the long run. And of course, when I say that, then I've seen photos where the bears actually get the pole and they'll shake the pole. They'll learn to shake the pole and shake whatever's in the feeder. So, just as soon as I say that, they'll, make a monkey out of me. So
I
anyway.
try to avoid talking about bears.
All right, okay.
It's a sore spot with everyone.
It is a sore spot. Okay, let's take our next break right now. Well, welcome back to the show. Ken, I was talking earlier before I get into this final segment, I was talking about how cold the water is right now, but do you know the coldest month of the year for water temperature in our area?
It's got to be like now.
It is. That's a softball question, but it is. It is February.
Or the 1st of February. Yeah.
It is, like I said the other day, the water temperature is cold right now. People ask me, do you wade fish down? I'm like, nope. I do have some waders, but I'll tell you, it is cold, and they're good duck waders, but I don't go out a lot in the wintertime and fish, but it is cold right now. So you can't do the wading in shorts right now. It's too cold.
Speaking of cold, there's been a bunch of snow talk and people, but I got a cool picture of a buck in the snow that we'll show in a little bit.
Okay, good.
It's a cool picture with
one that'll
snow coming down.
You'll wait till next year.
I wasn't there that time.
So. Okay, all right. Yeah, I actually got a chance to hunt in the snow in Alabama one time, and that was the most surreal experience I've never seen, because the woods are all white, and then
it's cool.
And when a deer comes through, their deer body heat, any snow on them melts. Mm-hmm. Or if they've got a little bit of snow on their back, and then they stand out like you've got a spotlight on them. But I had never seen anything like that.
I did that in Kansas one time.
Yeah, that's cool. Listen, one thing I wanted to mention right now, and I know Winston probably has talked about this already, but for you saltwater fishermen here on the coast, if you like the near shore species like speckled trout or spotted sea trout as they're technically known, we call them speckled trout, but the month of February is closed now. For several years, you've not been able to take trout during the month of February, so it is closed. So I've got a friend that fishes for them. In fact, he went just a couple of days ago, and he told me he probably caught 20 trout. They're stacked up right now. Oh, and let me add this. He released all of them. This is just catch and release during this month if you catch any trout. So let me rephrase that. But trout are stacked up right now in some of these deeper holes, and so if you go to some of our places around here and get you some live shrimp, they're a lot of fun to catch right now. You can either free spool them, in other words, don't use a cork or a lead, or you can use a split shot above your hook. But they're stacked up in some of these holes, so they're fairly easy to catch right now. And of course, then before long, once that water temperature starts climbing, we'll see not only speckled trout, but flounder and redfish back on the flats. Redfish are already there, but they will be back available. Kent, I wanted to mention real briefly, but in the couple of minutes we have left, about the reporting. Spring turkey season's coming up. But there is a reporting process that's required now for both your deer and for turkeys.
Yep.
And I hear people say, well, it's taking our liberty away, it's doing this, it's doing that. It is the simplest thing, and it takes a few seconds.
Yeah.
And have you got experience recently with your deer?
3 times this season, and I might have used up 2 minutes of my life.
It is the simplest procedure that you can possibly imagine. You download this app on your phone. You can, once you punch it, you can go in there, you can report where you are, what you've killed. And again, it's not only for deer, but it's for turkeys coming up as well in the spring season. In fact, you're not even supposed to move that animal until it's reported. So, word to the wise.
Another way of looking at it is it for my entire career, and probably yours, we had no idea how many deer or turkeys that were in the state of Florida. It was an estimate. There was never any counts. All this is some biological data to help
that's provided our wildlife folks
to manage the deer and turkeys and how many are harvested, and
not only that, most states have some sort of have had. Florida is late to the party.
Yeah.
And it's because of pushback and resistance and people going, well, I don't want to change, and But anyway, it is worth your time. If you're as old as I am, or Ken, probably not that old, get a young person to show you how to put that app on your phone.
Well, if you take your deer to the processor, you better have your number.
That is a great point. You can't, a lot of these processors,
they won't take them.
They've been tattooed by FWC officers showing up, and the officers have read them the riot act about these animals, these deer, and they won't accept them if you don't have that number to give them. So they will give you a confirmation number at the end of that process.
But it's basically for data.
Yes,
it's not
exactly
to track where your hunting spot was.
All right. Folks, we appreciate you watching, and I know Winston appreciates you watching the show as well. And with that, we wish you well.
Thanks for watching America's only daily outdoor TV show, Panhandle Outdoors with Winston Chester, featuring hunting, fishing, and other activities and information to help you enjoy the great outdoors. Join us next time for Panhandle Outdoors.